everybody. Welcome to part 3 of our Art of Clarity series. I'm Sarah Nolan, and I'm the founder of Recharge and the founder of the Inner Circle, where I take people through a transformational journey. This is really designed for successful business owners, high achievers who are ready to really look at what does success mean for me and expand that in every area of life. So super excited about our topic this evening. Find out what the 6 blocks that might be clouding your vision are. All right, so yesterday we talked about why clarity is so very important for business owners. And the day before that, we talked about why it's what exactly is clarity. So we got really clear on what clarity is. We talked about why it's so important for high achievers and business owners. And tonight we're talking about what are the 6 things that might be clouding your vision, like causing lack of clarity. And every single human has some level of lack of clarity. Nobody has perfect clarity because there are always more layers to what's out there. We were talking about how, what we can actually see and perceive is like 0.001% of what's really there. We have the limitations of our physical eyes, then we have the limitations of our brains based on past experiences and beliefs and things like that. So hello, Tess. Thanks for joining us this evening. So first of all, let's start out by check in with us. Tell us where you're joining from so that we can get to know you a little bit better. And we'll dive right in here. All right, so what is clouding your vision? What you see right now, what you physically see even. Have you heard the story of when Europeans first started coming to North America? And I'm sure this wasn't when they first started coming, but this particular story takes place when the Europeans were in the early stages of coming to settle in North America. And this was before anybody in this region had even seen a boat. Everybody was used to either small canoes or, walking in whatever their other transportation was. But these were big ships, and nobody could even fathom what these big ships were. And somebody was on the lookout and said, there's something there. We got to go check it out. And nobody could even see the ships, but what they could see is the water moving differently. And it was different than anything that I'd ever seen. It didn't look like a storm. It didn't look like, the tide. It was different. So they went down, and the closer the big ship came, the more it came into view. And so finally, when the big ship was right in front of them, they could see, okay, it's this big wooden structure. But because they had never seen a ship, they weren't able to perceive it in their minds. So think about how many times does this happen to you on a daily basis? Because what's in front of you doesn't match your model of the world. It doesn't match what you were taught about. It doesn't match your story of what's possible. And I just want to make sure my sound is okay. It doesn't match what's possible, what you have been taught is possible. Does that make sense? So there are many different things that can distort our vision or cloud our vision. One of them is a story, like what I just talked about. If you grew up and everybody in your community grew up believing that there were, the water is supposed to look a certain way, and that boats are supposed to look a certain way, and that some things are possible and some things are not possible, you're not going to see that massive ship coming towards you. right? So that's like the stories can distort our vision. The stories cause us to filter certain things out and allow certain things in. Because if we allow everything in, then there's no rhyme or reason to anything, and it doesn't really make sense. So we need to live by these stories in order to have some kind of order, some kind of certainty in our worlds, so that we're not just totally overwhelmed by input. We don't have like that sensory overload. So our brains show us a reality based on our stories. And sometimes our stories serve us, and sometimes they don't. More often than not, if we're struggling with something, then our story is not serving us, and our story is actually causing our brains to show us a distorted reality. Okay, so that's number one, is the stories. Number two is perfectionism. So perfectionism will cause you to see things typically worse than they really are. Think about somebody who's like a total neat freak. They're going to isolate every piece of dirt or clutter that is possibly there and make up more. If you are tuned in to what's wrong with something, then you're going to find yourself making up what's wrong with something. And that's part of perfectionism. Somebody who's a perfectionist will always tune into what's wrong. And so that's going to distort your vision. It's going to distort the way that you see the world. So you're not seeing reality. You're seeing this filtered out reality focused on what is wrong. This applies also to people who are trying to lose weight and have that perfectionist mentality with weight loss. Typically, people in that situation will always see themselves as heavier than they really are, to the point of making it up sometimes, like glancing at the scale and seeing a bigger number, or seeing themselves in the mirror as a different shape than they actually are. Number three is fears. And I talk about a lot in the Recharge program. We have these patterns of fear, and these patterns of fear were installed typically in the first 6 years of life. So they can be installed through traumas, or they can be installed through patterns that the adults around us are displaying. So if the adults around us are constantly talking about, fearful things, if the adults around us are fearful themselves, that's going to install a fear pattern in our minds, so that we are always distorting our reality with this fear filter. And then if we experience, some emotional trauma, and it was a very scary experience, the same thing will happen, that scary experience. And it could be as big as abuse, or it could be as seemingly small, it's still big, as somebody yelling at you at a very vulnerable time in your life. Okay, so those things can cause these fear patterns to be installed, so that suddenly we start living our lives seeing through a lens of fear. All right, and the next one is doubts, and it's the same kind of thing as the fear. If you it's a little bit different, because it's not the same type of pattern. But if you have some insecurities and you start to doubt your process, you start to doubt your life, you start to doubt yourself, then those doubts are going to damage or distort the way that you see reality. So you're going to start seeing reality from a place of, this isn't going to work, this isn't enough, this isn't good. And that is going to be your filter for what you perceive. The next one is very similar. It's insecurities, and that goes beyond doubts. The insecurities are limiting beliefs, things like, I'm not good enough. I am not enough. There is not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. I'm not worth it. I don't deserve it. All of these beliefs start to filter in what you see. They filter out opportunities. So there are opportunities lying right in front of you right now that if you have these insecurities, if you have these limiting beliefs filtering your vision or clouding your vision, you don't see them. You don't see those opportunities. It's like, when you lose your wallet and you look everywhere for your wallet and it's like, where the heck is my wallet? It's not anywhere. The wallet's gone. It's nowhere. What happened to it? But then it's like right in front of you, right? So your brain will filter out what it perceives based on the stories, based on the beliefs. So the next one is voices from other people. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly, they constantly sharing their opinions with you or sharing advice with you, those voices are going to distort the way you see reality. Potentially, you may have some really positive voices that help you to see reality, which is amazing. That's like the best case scenario. And then there are voices from their past that stick with you. Like if somebody told you like you're scum, if a friend or a brother or sister or a family member said that to you once, said something like that, that voice is going to be like embedded in your brain, and it's going to be filtering out, things that don't match up with that message. Again, filtering out opportunities, filtering out, the next steps that will lead you to your success, because that voice does not want you to be successful. And that voice is echoing in your mind. Sometimes it's so subtle, we're so used to it. It's like your heating system. The heating system can be really loud in your house, right? But then you get used to it and you don't hear it anymore until suddenly it's gone and it's like, wow, that's really quiet. So those voices, we just get used to them and we don't realize how much they're influencing us until they're gone, until you go through the recharge process and you remove those voices, and suddenly you have quiet, you have freedom, you have clarity. So, hey, honey. Hey, Dana. So I'm just going to go through this really quickly to recap here. The 6 things that are clouding your mind or potentially clouding your mind and preventing you from true clarity are things like doubts and fears, perfectionism, insecurities, voices from other people, and your own story. So these are all things that shape the way that you perceive your reality. And more often than not, they're distorting the way that you see your world. They're filtering out opportunities, and they're causing you to see life oftentimes worse than it really is. And so it's not about seeing things better than they are. It's about seeing things for what they are, and then having the power to project a positive vision so that you can go forward towards that. So how does that sound? Does that all make sense? So I'm going to be inviting all of my inner circle people into a Zoom chat so we can talk, we can do some Q&A. So I'm going to set that up now. Let's see, we're going to start a new meeting, and then I will send you the link. there's the link. So join us there. And then I'm going to end this video, but I would love my inner circle people to join me in that Zoom meeting. And Paige, hello Paige. So Paige, you can join us in there too. Dana and Honey and Tess, you can all join me in the Zoom meeting. All right. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, guys. Have a great night.